Hey everyone, in this video I've just taken a bunch of pictures. I do have some video involved in it as well, but mostly it's just pictures of the disassembly process of this truck. So this right here is just the body coming off, and what we are doing with this is installing a Scorpion Unlimited lightweight racing chassis and a modified RC rear chassis plate. Up next, just the exhaust coming off. Anything that's bolted to the main chassis is more or less gonna have to be removed. So yeah, y'all stick around, got a lot of helpful information for you. So what we're doing here is just blowing everything off, just getting everything as clean as we can. I'm not gonna hit it with a toothbrush or rinse it down or anything like that, but I want to get all of the loose particulates off. You know, I don't want to have to deal with things making a mess on the table, anything that gets knocked around. Just blowing off all of the rough material. Y'all will notice that as I take it apart further, there's a lot of places that were missed, but as it goes on, it's just, you know, just knocking the top layer off just to keep it kind of cleaner, I guess. Alright, so you'll notice right here we have partially disassembled the air cleaner assembly. What we are getting ready to do here, if I remember correctly, is take the tank and the radio box out of the chassis. Yeah, this is me. I've unhooked my kill switch, taken out of my box. The radio box comes out along with all the servos and everything. It's one fully contained unit, really cool. The fuel tank as well comes out, and then we are ready to disassemble the front Y plate and steering assembly and get the whole front end out of this truck. Always put your screws back where they belong if at all possible. And now we have the front end completely taken off of the truck. Everything else is pretty explanatory, but there's a lot of bolts back here holding this on. So far the pictures have been in sections, so to kind of keep it simple, but there's a lot of bolts back here to take off. So I'm going to try and change out the chassis and avoid taking the engine off. And then for the rear chassis plate, I'll bolt all this back together and then pull the rear chassis plate off and put the new one on. I might not be able to do that now that I noticed that this is actually on the inside of these chassis rails. So I do have all of this braced with aluminum, including this piece here. So what I may do is just flip this over and go ahead and take the bottom plate off as well. If you're doing both pieces at once, as you can tell on the bottom plate down there, it's probably what I would recommend doing. You don't have to pull the engine out and all this. This is all done in a kind of a system of parts that are grouped together, as you've noticed in the pictures. And this is the coolest thing ever. It's just that's your battery box, your servos, that's everything. There are no wires that go anywhere else to the chassis other than your kill switch. So that self-contained system is the coolest freaking thing. And then the fuel tank too. This actually still has fuel in it, and you just unpin it, take it off like you've seen in the pictures. So really cool system that they have for this truck. I love that. But when you're working around dirt, you noticed when I was blowing it off, I had a sock in the exhaust, a cork, anything to just keep stuff from getting in there. Same goes for your air filter. But yeah, I should have left the air filter on, but I needed to get under the tank and all that good stuff. So watch out when messing with an open engine in dirty, dusty environments, because if you get stuff in there, it's bad. Certainly in this part, if you get it in here, there's a chance it might blow it up, not blow it up, but blow it out, you know, just the first couple of pulls. But in here, you're sucking air in, so anything that gets in here is getting pushed into the engine or sucked into the engine. So what you're seeing here is my example of plugging all of the holes, right? And just everything. We're about to flip it upside down, so I also pulled the spark plug and put a little bit of toilet paper down in there. Assembling the chassis, already put the stiffening plate on. I did nut the back of these screws even though the chassis is threaded. The old chassis coming off. Some close-up of all of those bolts back there that need to come out. Every one of those have to come out. Alright, so another video segment here. It did work how I wanted it to, and I got the entire chassis, main chassis and rear plate off all in one. So I'll show you the bolts that you had to take loose, or that you have to take loose, which is pretty much every single bolt. These have to come loose, all of this. These little sections here, I think you'll have, no, I'm thinking of this because it's usually flipped. All of these had to come loose. Your engine mount bolts, this is still pretty sturdy. Like I said, this is all held to the back with all of my aluminum here. If you're using plastic, you may have some shifting, but hopefully it all goes back together. There are 2 bolts that are shorter back here. It's these 2 here, and I pulled them from right here. This is your front bulkhead half. So just remember those. All the other bolts are the same size. They are right there. These have been separated, and they are actually going to go back where I got them from. And I do this with all of my bolts. If there's something that's different or cannot be universally interchanged, or even if I just if it's just stuff for the front half there. So I did it here. So my front bulkhead bolts, I actually stripped the plastic bulkhead so I have them nutted. Those are in their place on my Kraken skid plate here. So a good way to keep track of screws, put them back where they go and only take them out when you're putting it back together. And then remove them, put them back where they belong, and screw them down. So I just wanted to point that out. There are some different sized screws here, and all of this came apart. I just kind of gave it a little thump, and it just popped right off. Everything all good. So we are now going to start the process of putting on the Scorpion Unlimited lightweight race chassis. And oh yeah, I did it even with this. You see these bolts, because some of them are different sizes, so they're stuck in the Y plate, so I know where they go back to. But we are going to assemble the modified RC rear plate and the actual chassis. You seen in one of the pictures earlier, I also went ahead and put the stiffening plate on. Now this chassis was threaded, but I tightened those down, and just for extra support I did put nuts on the back of it, because I do not want them coming out. I don't want them to strip the chassis. I don't want any of that. So I went ahead and put 2 nuts on the back of each of these bolts here. So sorry, another video here. It's just I wanted to show you a difference in thickness. This is your stock stamped steel or whatever it is plate, stamped aluminum, whatever it is, water jet cut, I'm not sure. Pay attention to right here and the thickness of the plate, right? So check this out. New chassis, new plate. Look at this. Look at the difference in your thickness. Plus this is actually CNC milled. But check it out. See the relief here? And it fits together. Check that out. That is beautiful. That's the difference in thickness right there. It's almost twice as thick as the stock plate, and it's a higher quality aluminum. That is absolutely awesome. I'm sorry, that's just cool to me how they milled it out so it fit. Yeah, just wanted to show that off. Alright, chassis is put back on. Word of advice, anything that is aluminum to aluminum. These bolts here, Loctite. Your motor mount bolts, Loctite. I use this blue thread lock. It's just, yeah, I actually used a bit too much last time. These were a pain to break loose, but I finally got them. So it's all back together. There's no binding. If there was binding, this wheel would actually be spinning backwards. So I can show you that. You see how it didn't move at first? These things have an open differential. If there is a bind in your drive line here, it'll lock and it will prefer to spin one tire backwards. Alright, so we are nice and smooth, no binding, no hard spots, nothing like that. And that was all done without disconnecting the engine from the rest of the frame. So all the bolts are back in. Another thing, this chassis, I don't know if it's just this one or all of them, these bolt holes back here are insanely tight. I mean, they need to be about a gnat hair bigger for the screws to slide in. So I actually had to thread the screws through the chassis. Now when you're doing that, you've got nuts back here. If you're still using your plastic, I don't know what they're called, but there's like these little plastic things back here. You'll see them if you ever do this. You've got nuts in that plastic, and because these are threading through this chassis, if they don't go right into those nuts, you'll actually push the nut out of the plastic. So just put your fingers back here when you're screwing these in, and just kind of keep an eye out on that and make sure you're hitting the threads right and not pushing it out. The aluminum pieces back here, if you buy the aftermarket aluminum, they are actually threaded. They don't have nuts on them, but the plastic ones do. They are actually like countersunk into the plastic. So just keep that in mind. This was real tight, and it's not so tight that you can't get the screw all the way down and then keep going. It's not that tight, but it's pretty close. When you're first putting them in, it does feel like it threads into the aluminum, even though this is not a non-threaded part. It feels like it threads in, and if it does, and it catches, and it forces itself, it'll force those nuts out of that plastic if you don't hit them just right. So just keep an eye out on that. If you hear anything drop and hit the floor, you might want to check, because chances are you're only threaded into the aluminum and you're not in the nut that is supporting this whole system right here. So just keep that in mind. Just keep your eyes out on that. But we are ready to flip it over, and I guess put all our fuel tank and radio box back in, and button up the front end. I've got some other parts. We're going to do those in a different video. This is just the main chassis stuff, but I do have all of the air filters, a carburetor, and a spiral diaphragm mod. This I'm not making a video on because I do not know how to do it. I'll have to read the directions. There are plenty of other people on YouTube who will show you this. I'm not going to, because if I screw this up, I don't want you to screw it up because you thought I knew what I was doing. Honest to God, I have no idea what this is or how to install it. A friend told me to get it. Also told me to get the 1107 because I'm running a bigger pipe, more air, right? So those two things right there. Once I get the spiral diaphragm on the carb, I will show a video of installing the carb and the new air filter assembly and all of that, but that's going to be a different video. Right now we're going to finish buttoning all of this up. So again, back to the slideshow. Hey everybody, so a couple of tips for you real quick. On the bottom of these chassis, you have these nut certs, I think is what they're called, that you have to put in, alright? They look like this right here. They gave me 2 extras, I guess, because on the old chassis, I can't find anywhere other than those 2 and the same place on the other side. So I guess they give you 2 extra, which is cool. Couple of hints real quick, a couple of tips, I should say. To get these nut certs in, I don't know how you're supposed to do it, but the way I did it was I took a bolt, and it's amazing how much clamping force you can get out of a bolt. Some of them are like thousands of pounds per square inch, just nuts amount of pressure. But you take a bolt, you run it through your chassis like that, except for where your nut certs go, right? And you grab one. Oops. Where'd you go? There you are. And you thread it onto your bolt, and then you just snug it up. And when this hits the bottom of this chassis, make sure that all of this is perfectly straight and in line, because these are concaved. It's best to do this with a cap head, but I don't have any free. You see how it wiggles? Make sure it's perfectly straight, and as you tighten it up, hold on to this. So I'm sorry about that thumbnail. That's terrible, isn't it? And it will suck it up into the chassis. You won't find a pair of pliers or anything else other than maybe a press that is going to apply more force than this bolt right here. So just put this on the end of the bolt and just snug it up. Make sure everything is nice and straight. You don't want it cockeyed. And suck it up into the chassis. It will press it in just with the power of the bolt itself. One more tip. Little plastic things that hold your tank in and stuff. These are a pain in the butt. What I had to do was take my pair of needle nose and put them up in the bottom of the chassis here, and like, I mean, you can probably see, yeah, no, oh yeah, you can right up there at the tip. See the little shiny part there? So that's where I've wallered out the holes here. That's the only way that I get these plastic pieces to fit. I have one of 2 choices. I can either take some sandpaper and carve them down, like sand them down, or I can, and I didn't go all the way up through the hole like a drill bit, right? I just reamed out the very, like, surface here, and then these kind of slid in a bit easier. I still had to knock them in with the back end of my, my big old screwdriver here. So yeah, that was a very tight fit for me, all 3 of these. I don't know if it's gonna be for you, and I'm guessing that the radio box is gonna be the exact same way. So yeah, just kind of widen out the surface of these holes a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit, and those little plastic pieces should slip right in, hopefully. That's the only advice I can give you on that, because that was a pain in the butt. Alright, so we've got all this buttoned up, but before we go any further, there is something that I need to check, and that is our kill switch, because it was unhooked when we took our box out, alright? So we're going to check this real quick. I'm going to show you something here, though. I am using a Killer Bee kill switch. Killer Bee kill switches come with a buzzer. When you hit your third channel button, they will beep. That does not mean that your kill switch will work. That is just your beeper telling you that the module is telling the truck to shut off. Just because that beeper works does not mean that it will 100% kill your engine during an emergency. Alright, I just want to make that very clear. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to test this. Most people already know this, but new people are coming to this hobby every single day. So I want to make sure that people just kind of know. So, if you don't know what this is a spark plug. It receives power from your coil down here, or your magneto, whatever you want to call it. That is where the kill switch is tied in. When your kill switch is working, if you turn it off, you will not get any sparks. So that is what we're going to test. I'm going to see if you can see it with the lights on, huh? Oh, there you go, yeah. You see it spark? See? That means we have spark. And with compression and fuel, you have a running engine. We're going to go ahead and turn our kill switch off. Again, just because it's beeping does not mean it's working. Alright? But we're going to try it again. We have no spark. Turn it back on. We have spark again. That is how I check my kill switch. If you don't have spark, you don't have a running engine. Pretty self-explanatory. So, our kill switch is working, we know that now. So everything's put back together right, the channel's hooked up correctly, everything there is good. I'm going to go ahead and put the next two little dills in the radio box here, put the pins through, and then, I don't know if I can get the carburetor on with my exhaust on it or not. Probably be done at that point, because again, in this video, we're not going to put the cage or carburetor on, so it's going to be a different video. But for now, this is about as far as it goes. We just got to put these up in there. So, I mean, that's it. That is the Scorpion Unlimited lightweight race chassis. Man, that looks cool. And that modified RC rear chassis plate. Now, they do sell two versions of this. One is actually an all-in-one skid plate eliminator type thing. But I still plan on running my stock plastic skid plate. And the reason why is because even though the screws under here are recessed and all that good stuff, I still just want that extra little layer of protection. So I'm still going to run my plastic skid. That's why I didn't buy the other one. The other one eliminates your skid. But that's buttoned up for now. We do need to get that on, but that's staying off because I'm redoing the carburetor. So, yeah. That's how you swap out the front and rear chassis on one of these things, I guess. I've never done it before. The first time. So, yeah. Y'all were here to do it with me. Man, that looks good. And it's going to look so much better when I put the body on it as well. And then we'll take it out because I'm going to definitely have to retune it with the new carb and all that good stuff. But, yeah. Thank you for watching. And I will I'll see y'all next time.